That was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. Was it seems to me like during that time that the only thing that you really seen turbo technology on was I instantly think of like GTAs, Grand Nationals, things like that. It seems to me like during that era, especially on the Ford side of things, that was kind of the innovator to the whole turbo technology being on V8 cars. Before that, you really didn't see it much.
No.
And that was kind of where you kind of, in my mind, you were very much a part of that forefront of figuring a lot of that stuff out.
But you got to remember, so during that time, like I didn't go turbo until 98.
Okay.
But during that time, Vortec was and ProCharger had just started.
Yep.
But the fastest cars were the turbo cars, and those were CarTech,
right,
and G Deputy, right there in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
Texas Turbo, that was the name of their company.
Right.
But I love racing those guys because you got to remember, the turbo technology wasn't where it is today.
Right.
So they had trouble spooling. All the things that make it hard to drag race. I used to love racing them because I would jack with them big. It was so easy to mess with the turbo car.
Well, it seemed to me like even the centrifugal technology was changing just as fast as turbos in. So
yeah, absolutely.
Can you take us through some of those changes that
Sure.
you're seeing?
So now we got to back up a minute. So again, this is my first marriage. So I decided that I wanted to get one of those Vortex. And so those were new at the time. Paxton had been around, but then Jim Middlebrook, who used to work for Paxton, he kind of started on the floor sweeping, worked his way up through management at Paxton, which is the Granatellis, and then he ended up becoming an engineer or what have you, and then he started Vortec.
Right.
So that now we have direct competition with Paxton. So I was one of the two first sponsored Vortec cars, but it was all on the DL.
Okay.
I don't know why at that time they didn't want to announce it. So, but I was basically a factory supported Vortec car. So like when all the new blowers came out that they hadn't released yet, one was on my car.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? I'm sure there's going to be some of the guys that see this and say, "Oh, that mother."
Yeah. Now we know.
Yeah. So yeah, I had a bunch of the new stuff. I was kind of their R&D. So anyway, so I was one of the first ones, and then there was Jimmy and his brother, the Keene brothers, out of Florida, if I remember right. Anyways, so yeah, Vortec was really the head at the pecking table when it came to the Supercharger stuff, and so they were doing really well. And Vortec's demise, and this is a lesson for companies to learn, and I see that going on today, is when you become the baddest ones out there, then you start to neglect your customers. So what Vortec had actually done is their blowers started blowing up. And what it was is they got a bunch of bad impellers that were, I think, not forged. It was something that they do with the metal. And there was a bunch of them that were bad, like I don't know how many, and they were all in the Mondo blowers. Okay, so they started blowing up. Well, what they were doing is they were blaming it on the customer. They were saying, "Oh, you spun it too fast in the burnout, or your blow-off valve isn't operating correctly." Instead of them, and I'm sure they would make a change now if they could, but instead of just saying, "Hey, we need to recall this stuff," and because you think about it, how many racers out there have the Mondo blower at the time? Right. There wasn't that many of them.
Yeah.
There really wasn't.
Right.
Just take it in the chin, get it fixed, because that really hurt them. And if you look at back then, you look at what really went on during that time, that's when ProCharger went from people laughing at them. I used to laugh at them because like when they first came out with the blower, we were at one race and Jimmy LaRocca, his might have been Nitrous Pete, his blower pulley came off and went down the track. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, there we go,
Yeah.
But they kept taking care of their customers, and what happened is Mondo is treating people, or Vortec treating people like shit, and so they start to decline, and ProCharger took off and never looked back, and it's been Vortec's never been able to keep back up.
That completely changed that industry.
Yep. And Vortec is a great product. They are a great company. They have, the detail. That's not cheap, piece of crap, but they really blew an opportunity. I feel like it's just my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's what we're here for, man. Kind of get your perspective